Bueno, muy buenos días a todos. En primer lugar, nuestras disculpas por empezar este acto un poco más tarde de la hora prevista, casi 15 minutos. Motivo de también disculpa para todas las personas que nos estarán ahora mismo viendo y oyendo a través de streaming, puesto que este acto lo estamos dando en directo a través de nuestra web. El motivo del retraso ha sido el éxito de esta convocatoria. Como todos podrán ver, el salón está lleno de personas interesadas en este nuevo estándar de catalogación, en este estándar ya no tan nuevo de catalogación, al que todas las bibliotecas debemos sumarnos. Interés que viene motivado por el problema de adaptación, la necesaria adaptación en nuestros hábitos de trabajo en un proceso tan complejo, costoso y que exige tanto esfuerzo a las bibliotecas como es el proceso técnico, como es la catalogación. Como todos ustedes saben, la Biblioteca Nacional en diciembre del año pasado decidió adaptar el nuevo estándar de catalogación, RDA en español, y estamos ya llevamos ya tiempo trabajando para que este proceso sea lo más fácil posible, tanto en la Biblioteca Nacional de España como en el resto de las bibliotecas españolas. Pensamos que este es un buen momento para adoptar este estándar y lo pensamos por dos motivos. En primer lugar, porque llevamos tiempo trabajando a través del Departamento de Proceso Técnico, su anterior directora, María Jesús Morillo, su actual director, Ricardo Santos, y todo el equipo del Departamento de Proceso Técnico, grandes profesionales y especialistas en catalogación de larga trayectoria, de largo recorrido, llevan tiempo trabajando en este proceso de adaptación. Y también porque pensamos que en este momento RDA está en un proceso también de cambio y de adaptación que va a convertir el universo de catalogación en un mundo diferente, en otra manera de comprender cómo desde las bibliotecas somos capaces de procesar y clasificar el conocimiento. Qué gran tarea. Desde hace tantos años las bibliotecas llevan intentando esto. Pensamos que ahora, en la era de Internet, es más necesario que nunca. Por eso, bienvenida esta jornada de trabajo, esta segunda jornada de trabajo. Bienvenidos a los miembros del RDA Steering Committee. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for staying here, working with us, working with every Spanish librarian. Thank you very much. Y esta es la segunda jornada que vamos a dedicar a escuchar experiencias de otras bibliotecas que ya han avanzado en este camino. Este acto se va a dividir en dos partes. En la primera parte, James Hennelly, de la American Library Association, nos va a poner al día sobre las funcionalidades del nuevo RDA Tolkien en construcción, es decir, esta nueva adaptación del estándar RDA. También Gordon Dunsire, chair del RDA Steering Committee, encargado del desarrollo de RDA, nos hablará del contexto que supone esto, la adaptación de este estándar con los datos enlazados, fundamental también para todas las bibliotecas. En una segunda parte vamos a oír experiencias de otras bibliotecas, valiosísima, porque ya hayan hecho el camino que nosotros vamos a empezar a hacer en este momento. La Biblioteca Nacional de España, como miembro fundador de URIG, Grupo de Interés en RDA, sabe que en este proceso de implementación no podemos estar solos. Necesitamos contar con la experiencia de otras bibliotecas, con esos pasos que se han dado, a veces en falso, que hay que volver atrás y que hay que volver a caminar. Por eso es fundamental contar con la experiencia. Experiencia de Alemania y Suiza, por ejemplo, y nuestros colegas de estos países nos van a hablar sobre las conclusiones de una implementación de largo recorrido que ha afectado a todos los países de habla alemana. Atención, estamos hablando ya de una toma de decisión que pasa fronteras. La experiencia de Islandia es también importantísimo, también nos la van a contar, porque nos van a explicar cómo este proceso se puede hacer más fácil. Es decir, no es necesario complicarlo tanto como pensamos. Es fácil o puede ser más sencillo hacerlo. También nuestros compañeros franceses nos van a hablar de cómo esta transición bibliográfica ha servido como camino para compatibilizar mucho mejor los diversos catálogos bibliográficos franceses, algo que también en nuestro país es fundamental que hagamos, compatibilizar y que se entiendan los distintos catálogos bibliográficos, cosa que ha facilitado la adopción de RDA. También desde España vamos a contar nuestra experiencia. Las bibliotecas catalanas nos van a contar cómo, a partir del año 2016, gradualmente ya están trabajando con este estándar. Y nosotros, desde la Biblioteca Nacional de España, vamos a contar nuestros planes, qué es lo que vamos a hacer a partir de este momento, algo que va a afectar al resto de las bibliotecas españolas. Y por eso somos muy conscientes que este camino no podemos en ningún caso emprenderlo solos. Necesitamos no solamente del aprendizaje previo de otras bibliotecas que ya nos están ayudando para cómo hacerlo, y además de la colaboración del resto de las bibliotecas españolas. Por eso, bienvenida a esta jornada. Muchísimas gracias a todos ustedes por acompañarnos, por estar hoy aquí, por trabajar con nosotros. Muchas gracias al RDA Steering Committee. Thank you very much. Que disfruten, que aprendan y que juntos nos ayudemos unos a otros a emprender este nuevo camino que, sin duda, va a cambiar, ya ha cambiado, está cambiando el universo de catalogación de las bibliotecas. Muchas gracias a todos.
Bueno, solo presentar a Gordon, aunque casi no es necesario. Él es actualmente el chair, el gran jefe de RDA. También trabaja en el grupo de revisión, en la sección de catalogación de IFLA, en el grupo de revisión de ISBD, de FRBR y algunos otros más que probablemente me deje en el tintero. Le hemos pedido que nos haga una exposición sobre qué es en esencia RDA, por qué no es exactamente un código de catalogación como el que conocemos y qué significa datos producidos bajo RDA. Así que os dejo con él.
Can the translators hear me okay? Everybody hear me okay? Before we start, I must report that the RDA Steering Committee has had a very fruitful meeting for these past 3 days, and that has been in significant part to the magnificent hospitality that we have had from the National Library and its staff. They've been very tolerant. We have left a trail of broken things, and everything has been very, very well organised and supportive. So, on behalf of the RDA Steering Committee, I would like to thank the Director General, the staff of the National Library, and everybody else in Madrid who's made this such a magnificent meeting. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to talk. This is a completely different talk, and this is the first time that I have presented from this point of view. So you are an experimental audience. Please indulge me. I'm going to talk about RDA data and context. The recent trend for RDA, the instructions, the stipulations, and everything else has been more focused on data than merely just cataloguing information. The situation that libraries find themselves in today involves the digital deluge. Libraries are facing a flood of digital resources. They're very cheap to make, and so people make them. We have a number of categories, components of this flood. There are the born digital publications. Most publishers now publish digitally before they publish in print. But many publishers are also busy digitizing their entire back catalogues because people now expect to read books on Kindles and other computing devices. The days when you took a paperback on holiday are disappearing. You now take a tablet with a digital book. Libraries themselves are engaged in mass digitization projects of their collections. And we mustn't forget the fact that anybody can be a publisher and an author in the digital environment. People are creating useful information resources all the time in the form of blogs, email messages, and even Twitter. Imagine if Miguel de Cervantes had a Twitter account. We would want to see it, we would want to access it, and libraries would need to collect it. But while the deluge occurs, we have nothing. We have fingers in dikes, and it's flowing over the top. Because the costs of cataloguing are significant. Libraries must acquire digital resources. This is a good thing. There are various reasons. Libraries are obliged under electronic legal deposit to collect digital resources. National bibliographies need to include digital resources in their scope in order to give a true picture of a national cultural heritage. Special collections require digital resources. In fact, digital resources in some libraries are a special collection. And libraries are digitizing resources, mass digitizing them, to improve access and for preservation purposes. So these are all good things, and these are all things that indicate that libraries should acquire such resources. But there's no extra money. Because they say, just use Google. Expletive deleted. We can obtain metadata now to describe and access these resources from many different sources. So these are the sources of metadata that libraries encounter. So we still have some professional catalogers. They tend to be smart, educated, trained. They follow standards, and they're very expensive. We have more and more amateur catalogers. Crowdsourcing is a typical amateur effort where people provide metadata. They too are smart, they're people, but they do it in a non-standard way. They are not trained, they have no standards to adhere to. And of course it's voluntary, we cannot make them do this. Publishers are also now a source of metadata. They too are smart. Any publishers in the room? But also they do not use library standards. They may use their own standards, but from our point of view, it's non-standard. And they are reluctant to supply us with metadata because it costs them money. Their catalogers are also expensive. And finally, increasingly, the main source of metadata is the machine. But machines are dumb. They're cheap, and we can make them slaves. They will work 24/7, they don't require food or shelter, and they don't complain. The result is a metadata maelstrom, a whirlpool. Libraries must obtain their metadata from that variety of sources because we cannot do it for ourselves. Libraries now have an attitude of get it when you can, take it when offered, no matter what the quality. That metadata can therefore be standard or non-standard, smart or dumb, certainly incomplete. It may have context, it may have been created in a different context from libraries. But we, if we use it properly, have to process it so that it can supply the data for coherent and consistent information retrieval for our users, the purpose of the catalogue. That's the human economic situation. We also have data contexts, data situations. And in traditional library schemas and modeling, we make a distinction between attributes and relationships. We basically say that if the data value that we record for a piece of metadata is a descriptive string, then we call that an attribute element. We say this is an attribute, like title. If the data value we can record is an identified thing, then we say it's a relationship element. If the identifier is a local identifier, and this includes ISBN and ISSN because they do not cover everything, then it's a local relationship that we're using. And finally, the latest technology gives us identifiers which are linked data values, or URIs. And these are global relationship elements. The URI is globally unique and is guaranteed to identify something at global level. This is reflected in the new IFLA library reference model. One of the strong features of the model is that it says that any string can be a thing. Any description can turn into an identifier, and any identifier can turn into a string or a description. So there is a duality between descriptive strings and identified things, a string-thing duality in the model. RDA also caters and has catered, since it was originally created, for various database scenarios. So the idea that RDA is about data has been there from the beginning. And there have been 3 database scenarios that RDA data is intended to be used in. The first and the dumbest is the flat file data. Everything is just in one large lump or record, like a catalogue card or an entry in a printed bibliography. The whole thing is there. There is also the traditional and very many vendor systems are today still based on these database scenario is of description and access. So you have one record for bibliographic description, and then you have a set of records for access. We call these authority records. And so there's a 2 kinds of linked record in this scenario. And that is how MARC works today. We have MARC bibliographic and we have MARC authority. And, because catalogers take a long time to assess things and decide what technologies are useful, even though relational databases have been around for decades, very few library catalogs are based on this technology, but nonetheless, RDA is intended to cater for it. So in a relational database, every type of thing has its own record, and they are linked together through identifiers. And the latest database scenario, which we now add to RDA's functionality, is linked data, and in particular, semantic linked data for the semantic web. So these are the 4 types of database that we expect RDA data to be stored in and processed in. RDA is developing. We decided yesterday that RDA will always develop. We have a strategy to extend the utility of RDA data beyond libraries to other cultural heritage organizations. We are developing RDA in an international context. This means not just translations, but being able to accommodate the practices used in different places. It comes as a shock sometimes to Americans and British catalogers that the Anglo-American way of doing things is not the only way that people do things. We're also looking forward to linked data communities. It seems to be the promise of the future. In order to accommodate these strategies, the RDA governance structure is going through a period of transition to international representation and specialized working groups to get specialized input into the process. We also have to take account of new standards and existing standards. The IFLA library reference model is radically different from anything that we've seen before, and RDA must change, must develop to meet this, to use this new standard beneficially and effectively. But there are other international standards maintained by IFLA, such as ISBD and UNIMARC, and there are non-IFLA standards like ISSN, International Centre, etc. And RDA must develop in harmonization and consultation with these external standards. And finally, the toolkit needs reviewed. It's 10 years old. The design, it has difficulties. A lot of people find it difficult to use. And so we have this 3R project, the Toolkit Review and Reorganization Project, which James Hennelly from ALA Publishing will talk about in the next presentation. No need for translation. RDA is a package of data elements. This is our single sentence statement about what RDA is. It's a package of data elements, guidelines, and instructions for creating library and cultural heritage resource metadata that are well formed according to international models for user-focused linked data applications. We developed the RDA toolkit. The 3R project is doing this to provide the user-focused elements, the guidelines, and the instructions. The machine stuff, the stuff for developers, is provided in the RDA registry. It provides an infrastructure for well-formed linked RDA data. And it depends itself on the open metadata registry, which provides the original resource description framework, linked data representation of those elements. RDA has always allowed 4 different ways of recording data for any piece of information, but we haven't made it very clear that these 4 methods are available. So as part of the 3R project, we are making explicit that there are 4 different ways of recording data, usually for any element. They are unstructured description, structured description, identifier, and URI with its fancy new name, the Internationalized Resource Identifier, or IRI. An unstructured description has no structure. It's useful for accommodating transcribed data. What you see is what you get. You don't impose structure on it. It's an unstructured description. Catalogers can make free text notes, no structure. We can use uncontrolled terminologies for description. This is typical of crowdsourcing. They index things, but there is no control over the terms. We can also use unstructured descriptions for non-standard metadata, perhaps from non-professional sources, or data that we simply don't know where it came from. It arrives on a CD-ROM, it comes from an organization, but they can't explain what standards were used or anything about the data. And so we can treat that as an unstructured description. Anything that lacks good provenance should be treated with caution. A structured description is useful for containing data that's recorded in a regular, standard, structured format. Structured descriptions and unstructured descriptions are primarily aimed at human consumers. These are the things that we display in our catalogues. The sources of structured description data have authority. They can consist of pre-existing structured information, or they can be created by the cataloger using a structure, what's called a syntax encoding scheme. ISBD is a great example of using a syntax encoding scheme to provide structure to the data that we find on resources. Typically, a structured description will be used for authorized and variant access points, or a controlled terminology from a vocabulary. It's therefore useful for data that comes from authority files, vocabulary encoding schemes, and general knowledge organization systems. Identifiers are labels, strings, but they're coded and not really intended to be read by human beings. Instead, they're intended for machine identification and matching purposes. Typically, the identifier recording method is used for local identifiers. That is, they are only guaranteed to identify or disambiguate within a local domain, such as the library management system or a consortial system where there are local identifiers. And typically, this recording method can be used for authority control numbers, standard identifier schemes such as ISBN, machine-readable database keys. If you have a relational database, you can record the table and row numbers to link the data together. And also authority-controlled terminologies and vocabulary notations. That is shorthand, like the mark codes for fixed data fields. You can't tell what the mark code is until you go look it up against the manual. And then finally, there is the true global linked data identifier, the IRI. An internationalized resource identifier is a super form of uniform resource identifier. These identifiers are guaranteed to operate correctly within a global domain, and then specifically the domain of the semantic web. And it's this kind of data that's used for what we might call smart machine applications. Machines are dumb, but we can program them to process things in a semantic, vaguely intelligent way. So visually, we have 4 recording methods for a related data value. If we are describing an entity, an RDA entity, we can say it's related to and then describe the related entity using a note. Or we can use an access point, or we can use an identifier, or we can use an IRI. And all 4 of these methods identify the same related source of information. This is where attributes and relationships blur. An attribute is a string value. The first 3 methods result in string values. A relationship uses an identifier, and the two, identifier and IRI, can be used for linked data, for relating data in a linked fashion. The first is local and the second is global. All four methods can be used at the same time. We can mix and match data from different methods. RDA then can be seen not just as a set of guidance and instructions and data elements, but as a tool for integrating data from these multiple sources that I've mentioned. Any RDA data element can usually accommodate all four types of data value. Some of the elements are restricted to just one recording method only. We can also assign multiple types of recording to a single element. If we then get metadata from multiple sources recorded in standard and non-standard ways with dubious provenance, we can mix it, we can assign it to a single element, but separate it out using these different recording methods. And this will allow metadata from multiple sources to be used in integrated catalogues and other applications. Now, this cannot be perfect. You cannot turn something that's dumb into smart without a human. But this is the best that we can do to control and make sense of the maelstrom of metadata that accompanies the flood of digital resources. This allows applications to get the best out of the data, the best that you can. All you can do with an unstructured description is index it. You can take keywords out, the machine can do this, and you have an index, but it's not controlled terminology by definition. A structured description allows authority and terminology control. We can then have separate authority data or controlled vocabulary data, and that's much more useful. An identifier can be used for local relational database applications. Local identifiers can be used to link together local data, and remember, local can be worldwide. And finally, the IRI is the only way of getting the best out of the power of the semantic web, the cloud of machines, the one giant global graph that Tim Berners-Lee talks about. In conclusion, then, I will say that RDA is for a smart future, not a dumb past. Thank you.
Voy a dar la palabra a James Hennelly, que él es de la American Library Association, es el director de los servicios de referencia digital del ALA Digital Reference, que es el organismo encargado de distribuir y editar el RDA Toolkit. Y nos va a hablar de los cambios, de cuándo podremos ver y cómo serán los cambios que veremos en el Toolkit, en la gran reestructuración que están haciendo. Ya nos lo contó bastante el lunes, pero bueno, hoy tenemos una audiencia más amplia, no viene mal volver a hablar de ello. So, Jamie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us here today. Gordon has already showed you this. I don't know, you may have noticed it in the lower corner, but this is our new RDA logo. This is the first part of our new design. I'm going to be jumping back and forth between the computer here, so I apologize for that in advance. Thank you. I'm short. These are the new logos that we have that associate with the governance bodies that run RDA. I'm also going to ask if the folks can bring me a laser pointer. you know, because I'll be showing screenshots of mock-ups of the new toolkit, and I'm talking about specific things in the screenshot. So I think. No? Oh, here. Thank you. I had it all the time. Our new toolkit logo. And this is the new login page for the new toolkit. I will make it bigger. So I hope all of you already use the toolkit, but if you don't, I hope you find this very pleasing. If you do use the toolkit, I'm a little more confident that you'll find this pleasing because the old toolkit has many limitations. So this area here is your new login box. In the past, we required 2 logins to get logged into the toolkit, one for your subscription and another for your personal profile. In the new toolkit, you'll be able to just use your profile login to get into both your institutional subscription. And if you're IP authenticated, it should recognize you as well as your profile, and you should be logged in right away. This area here will be information that comes from the RDA Toolkit blog, and probably will pull in RSC, RDA Steering Committee information as well. Initially, this will all be in English, but we will build in the capacity to expand that to other language news updates in the future. We also will have sections on newly updated material in the toolkit, so you'll know as you arrive what has been most recently updated. And this products area will actually be called something along the lines of RDA Learning Center. And it'll contain information about new books and maybe important events that you can attend about RDA. This is the logged in page. If you're logged in, this is what you'll see. One of the significant changes we're making is that we're going to capture the pages that you most recently visited. So when you get logged out of the toolkit, you step away for whatever reason at work and you come back, you'll be able to return to where you were more quickly instead of having to do another search or recall where you were. Then we will also have this area for the documents that you subscribe to and information that you have in your profile. By documents, in the current toolkit, we have an area called workflows, and that is basically an online HTML editor that allows you to create your own documents and put them on the toolkit. Rather than call them workflows, we're just calling them documents or contributed documents. They're user created. And this will give you access. It can tell you which ones you can also subscribe to certain documents because these documents can be shared with all of Toolkit. They can be shared just locally within your own institution, and they can be kept private. So this first section will show you if any of the documents that you subscribe to that you choose to see have been changed recently. And then it'll also tell you if someone has subscribed to your documents that you share globally. So this is just a look at some of the navigation that we're going to provide for the new toolkit. The important area is these first 4 tabs that will be persistent at the top of the toolkit. Entities will drop down and show you all the entity chapters. This is, and the glossary at the bottom. Guidance will be a list of the general guidance chapters. Policy statements will show the list of policy statements that are available, all the from Finnish policy statements to Library of Congress policy statements to Music Library Association policy statements. And then resources, which I think has been named other resources, will contain just supplementary information from, say, the big table on books of the Bible. We discussed yesterday changing some of the content on the toolkit, moving into this other resources area. And there'll be kind of older archival information that might be of some interest to people, such as the AACR2 text as well. This area here, under views, which I'll go into more depth about views later, but this is where the buttons for doing a quick language change will exist, and dual view language, which allows you to compare 2 different language versions of RDA together. You can see where they're at. When you're logged into your profile, you'll see your name, a little drop-down menu for log out and to go manage your profile. This is the new search box. Instead of having the advanced search box that takes you to another screen, you'll have this search box that's right there, and it has a drop-down menu to allow you to filter on the content you want to search. You can search all of the toolkit's content, or you can choose to search just RDA or policy statements or some other related document. I'll show you the search results page, which will, in a little bit, which will allow you to further filter your search results. So this is a typical instruction page. So this would be, first let me talk about this little area. So when you click on the entities and you choose an entity chapter, say manifestation, you'll land at the manifestation page. But if you click in, you'll also see this little graphical piece. And this is the main browser piece that we're developing for the toolkit. It's intended to show the hierarchy and the structure of RDA, so that as you use the toolkit, you'll be the relationships and the elements created and how they fit into the hierarchy will be illustrated, we hope, and that will be informative as you use the toolkit. So you can see here this media type element that we're looking at is associated with the manifestation. It has peer elements and it has sub-elements. And if you click on this image, it'll expand to a larger graphic browse. I'm not going to show, that's still in a very early development stage, so I'm not going to go into a lot more detail about that, but this is what we're planning. So you have your title, definition, and this little button, element reference. You can open this up. You just click it to open it up, and it'll show you just a quick list of what we consider important information associated with this element. So this might include user tasks associated with it, resource description, is that what we're calling for full path now? Recording methods, that's it. It'll show what recording methods can be used with this particular element. Mark mapping, it might show what mark field is associated with this element, etc. Under that, then, you will find recording information. Here's an example of the options box. We also have alternatives, optional omissions, optional additions, exceptions, etc. So those boxes will still be there. They'll have a slightly gray tint. I hope you can see that. I'm not going to talk a lot about the structure of the instruction itself because that's determined by the RSC, but you can kind of see this goes into the different recording methods. Under recording, this is a link. This, if you click on that phrase, manifestation details of media type, you will go to that instruction. But if you click on that, it's going to preview over here in the right column, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. You have examples that you can have set to be opened or closed, and we're going to be offering a range of examples in the new toolkit. We will have the basic style examples that you see now, but we will also be adding new examples based on recording methods, specific recording methods that Gordon outlined. We will also have some that are graphical relationship examples, and we will have what we call examples in context. So in your profile, you'll be able to select what type of example you want to see. And you can filter to that. But you can also, this little button here will allow you to say, oh, I want to see more than what I initially chose to see. So you can expand your view of the examples. This is a note that you can leave yourself, or you can share locally with your other members of your cataloging staff. I'll show all these to you. These are, this is a vocabulary list. You can hopefully see that little gold underline on that. That means those are clickable. You can pull up the definition. So here in the right column, we have related policies. This is where policy statements will show up. So we're going to be adding more and more policy statements to the toolkit, and instead of adding more of those little colored beans to each instruction, we're just going to have, we're going to ask you in your profile to subscribe to the policy statements you want to see. And when you do, so in this example, we've subscribed to LC, Library of Congress policy statements, and British Library policy statements. The star means you have your preferred number one policy statement that you want to see first. So in this case, it's Library of Congress. And if you go down, you will see these are the other these are the other policy statements that are available. So even if you haven't subscribed to them, if you want to see them while you're using the toolkit, you can still go see them. The grayed out, the lighter ones, indicate that there is no policy statement for this element by that institution. If it's black, that means there is a policy statement. So this is what it looks like when the policy statements are open, I should say. When they're open, you'll see about 50 characters or 500 characters will display right here with the title. And there's a little line that kind of makes sure it's clear that these two align with each other. So this aligns with the text that it's referring to. This policy statement is aligned to the text that it refers to, which is recording an unstructured description. Anyone familiar with the toolkit knows that these policy statements can be very simple, straightforward, apply this option. They can also be very complex and long. The complex and long ones obviously will not fit in this right column. So we will have a link at the bottom that will take you to the full-blown policy statement if it is a more complex one. I did say that these previews would be about 500 characters. Now, if you get into a situation where you have one policy statement right after the other, it'll get, the preview will be shortened because the whole thing is based on the policies aligning with where they refer to in the text. So that will trump the length of the preview. So instead of pushing things down, we make sure they all align. As I mentioned earlier, when you have a link in the instruction text, there'll be this little icon on the side, and it'll open a preview. Again, about a 500-character preview of the content that it's referring to. So when you click that, if you have your policy statements on, it'll turn your policy statements off to show you the preview. When you turn that preview off, your policy statements will come back. This was both the policy statement and this preview. These previews will only work for cross-references to RDA material, so within RDA instructions. But both this preview of RDA instruction links and display of policy statements are a response from our user group that they don't want to have to toggle or click back and forth between different pages, but rather be able to see content side by side and in a more integrated display. So this is how we've addressed that problem. Here's the pop-up definition that I mentioned earlier. So when you see that orange underline or gold underline, it means you can click it and it'll bring up the definition of that particular vocabulary term. You will also be able to highlight any part of the text in the toolkit, and it will bring up this box. You can choose to bookmark this particular area, which just leaves a mark that you can come back to. You can leave a note. Notes and bookmarks can be shared locally within your institution, or they can be private. They cannot be global. They cannot be shared with all of RDA Toolkit subscribers. And then finally, you can get the URL to make a link to this particular section of the toolkit. This is samples of the dialog boxes that will come up when you choose one of those three actions. So here's your create link dialog box. Here's your bookmark and new note dialog boxes. One of the features we're adding to this is we're going to allow you to create folders to allow you to organize your bookmarks or notes in any way that you might find useful. You'll also be able for, say, particularly locally shared notes or etc., you can get notifications if someone has changed the content of those notes. So you know, oh, this has changed, there's a new policy, I should go check it out. This is just a little look at what the glossary will look like. There's nothing particularly noteworthy about it, but it's hopefully easy to read. This is the search results page. So you can see we'll have a display. It'll organize first. It'll show the RDA content with hits. So you're seeing 10 of 138 hits on your search. And then you have option to go see more of them. It'll be followed by 5 examples of the policy hits, the first 5 hits for policy statements. And finally, contributed documents. You'll be able to apply a number of filters on not only the search results, but on the actual search yourself through your view if you like. You can always limit it to your searches to always be only RDA or only policy statements, etc. You can change the sort by relevance, by alphabetical order, or by document order. So for RDA, document order would be entity chapter first, then by alpha by entity, and then alpha by element, followed then by guidance chapters and alpha by guidance chapter title and guidance chapter subject, excuse me. And here are more filters you can apply. These are to RDA documents. You can restrict it to instructions, glossaries, examples. I'm not sure if we'll have quite this same mapping option, but there will be some kind of mapping, references, etc. And you'll have the policy statements that you set in your preferences in your profile will be the same policy statements that get searched when you do a policy statement search. But you can go here and adjust that as well too if you need to expand it. This is the bookmark and notes display. As I said, you can create folders. You can determine what access you want for those particular bookmarks. Edit, delete, add new folder. I think it's pretty straightforward. Profiles are going to become very important in the new toolkit. And the emphasis, we will require all institutions, subscription administrators, to create a profile for their subscription. And that will be, I'll show more about this in a second, but that will be kind of the default setting of documents that are displayed and preferences that are displayed for the toolkit for your staff. And then your staff will have the option to go in and set a personal profile if they want. As administrator, you would have the option to turn off the ability of your staff to make profiles. We've had feedback from some institutions that they don't want their staff making their own personal profiles. So you would have the ability to turn that off. This is the contributed document interface. Again, so at the top section here, contributed documents, these are documents that you or your staff have created and are available for editing and viewing. And you would be automatically subscribed to your own documents. So if they can be private, the individual can keep them private, but if they're shared locally or globally, then everyone on your staff will have access to that document, just to view. Then you can also subscribe to other documents that are shared globally. And I'll show you that interface in a moment. You can go in and pick out. You can subscribe either by institution or by document name. So when you open one of your contributed documents to edit, this is what you see. These are the fields. You give it a title. This little button here allows you to pop it out into a new window, and you can expand the writing area so you can work comfortably with it. One of the main things we've added is the ability for multiple people to share ownership of a document on the toolkit. In the past, only one person could, the person who created it, only that person could edit it and manipulate it. And in the new toolkit, you can have it shared by any number of authors. But only one person can edit it at a time. So you would check out the document, make changes, check it back in, and then another person could go in and work on it. Here's the editing area with, familiar macros to do the sorts of things you're used to doing in documents. This is an HTML editor, but it has an interface that's kind of like Word. It's not exactly Word, so don't get frustrated that it doesn't do everything your Word formatting does, but it does the basic things that most people want to do with documentation. If you want to do something beyond these macros, I think there will be you can switch to the HTML view. And if you're good at writing HTML, then have at it. This is that subscription part I was telling you about. So you can see here, with user-created content, contributed content, you can check that box and just say, I want to see any documents that the British Library puts up. Or you can go down and choose particular documents that they have and say, I want to keep this document available to me. All these things that I've been showing you, the bookmarks and the contributed documents, etc., are things that you manage through your profile. One of the most important things that you manage from your profile are what we are calling views. And the first view that every account will have is an institution view. So when you subscribe to the toolkit, we'll probably give you a default institution view initially, and it'll be based on your IP address that tells us what country you're from, so we'll make an assumption about what language you probably want to speak and what policy statements you probably want to see. So if your IP address is from United Kingdom, we'll default that we'll assume you want to see this in English and that you want to see British Library policy statements. And that would probably be the default. At that point, the subscription administrator could go in and change that institution profile to more directly align with the needs of your library. This first setting is the RDA template, and with the initial rollout of the 3R project, there'll only be one option there, and that's RDA standard. That's an unfiltered, full expression of all the RDA instructions. In the future, we hope to build new views that are tailored to specific subject needs. So there could be an RDA for music, or an RDA for legal cataloging, etc. And we will build those post 3R, and that's where you could make that choice for your preferences to say, I want a filtered view of the RDA instructions that are aligned with the particular needs of my cataloging day. Language, access, that's either institution or personal. So that's where you say, this is a profile that's available across my institution. And there can be more than one institutional profile. You can have a BNE profile for music catalogers, and you can have a BNE profile for general cataloging, and a BNE profile for rare books, etc. You could set in specific institutional profiles. And then, of course, the private, a person can have private preferences that they apply. And all these you can see up here in the header, people will always be able to click into these different views that they have available to them, so they can switch a view at any time that they need to. In the middle here, you can see this is where you would select the policies you want to see. You'd set a primary policy. You set a preference to always open a related policy, have policy statements always open in that right column, or you can turn it off. Here's where you select the types of examples you want to see. And here's, you can choose to have that element reference button I showed you at the beginning. You can set that to have that always open if you want it to always open. I'm getting near the end here. Okay. So another piece of feedback we heard is that people wanted more information about releases and information that was a little easier to follow. So this is our version of release notes. One of the things they wanted to do was be able to see a kind of track changes or difference report between the instruction prior to the release and the instruction afterwards, if it changed. That became technically difficult to do. So we came up with a workaround that may not be the most elegant solution, but it's a functional one, we believe. We will have notes on development changes to the functionality of the toolkit, and then there'll be an area for edits to the RDA that will show what instruction changed and have a brief note about why it was changed. Then we will provide you with an archive of the old PDFs. So when a release goes live, when we have published a new release of the toolkit, you will always have access to PDFs. If you click the print button on the instruction page, it'll open a PDF of that instruction. So you will be able to take that new PDF and this old PDF, and we have a list of recommended software tools where you can compare those two, and it'll give you a report on what changed, and that's how you can kind of visibly see what changed in the toolkit. For right now, all we're going to do is give you that list of like 5 recommended PDF compare tools. In the future, if we find one that we think is significantly reliable and of quality that it's worth our investment and has a license that we can afford, we'll put it into the toolkit, and you'll just have it there in the toolkit, and you just pick your PDFs to load and get a compare report. One of the key parts of this new revision history for 3R is that we make it available to the translators as well. So while ALA Publishing will provide this release notes for the English language RDA, we'll expect our translation teams to provide similar notes for when they update their translations of RDA. So there will be a release notes for Spanish, French, German, etc. That's it. I did it.
Bueno, tenemos un tiempecito, unos 10 minutillos para que aprovechéis y hacéis esas preguntas que os rondan por la cabeza. Tenemos por aquí Roberto.
Sí. Hi. Hi. I have a question. I really like and support every changes you are introducing to RDA and RDA toolkit, and I think it matches what I personally expected from RDA more than the current toolkit. But my feeling is that we won't see the strength of these changes in the current ILS environment. Well, you can see it in tools like RIMF, but you cannot see it in an average ILS. My question is somehow in RSC agenda to deal with this technological development part, or are you just living? I think we are very advanced in data modeling, but not so advanced in exploiting this data modeling. So I think, well, I want to ask if it's somehow in the agenda of RSC to deal with this part of that technological part, or you are just leaving to some developer to come and make magic?
The different recording methods that we will offer mean that you can use existing systems, existing vendor systems. Those vendor systems, as Roberto has pointed out, do not take advantage of modern data modeling schema. They don't even take advantage of a 15-year-old schema called FRBR. There's nothing we can do about that. It's something you can do about it, because you're the people who buy these systems. And the systems vendors want to hear from you what you want. And that's all we can say. We will support you, but we cannot do anything about it.
Hi, I have a question. I don't know if I have understand it correctly, but with the catalogers, who are supposed to be expensive and do expensive work, we are used to work with standards that are for free in the internet. As far as I have understood from your presentations, the RDA is not available for free, or libraries will have to pay for that. And at the same time, you have the aspiration to be a universal tool. How do you do you have any commitment with the open source movement? Can we expect that the RDA will be an open resource for all the librarian community? Do you think that libraries in poor countries will be able to access the RDA achievements?
I'm going to ask also if you can stand up when you ask a question so I can kind of see you better. That's all right. I see you now, but I was searching the audience before. Developing a website and maintaining a website costs money. There's no way around it. I wish I could give you this standard for free. It's not possible in our current business situation to do that. We've already incurred, and when I say we, I'm talking about the American Library Association basically funds the development of RDA. And while it has money, it doesn't have that much money that it can do it without getting some revenue back. We rely on a lot of volunteer work by RSC members and RDA board members and people who contribute to working groups. So we do try to keep the cost as minimal as possible. We are willing to work, we are flexible on our pricing and our user license depending on the size of your group. And we will make whatever efforts we can to ensure that the toolkit is affordable for anyone who wants to use it. But at the present time, I can't say that there'll be a way to make it free and open to everyone. Some of the content is free. The policy statements that come out of national libraries are by law required to be free. So any policy statements you see on the toolkit do not require a subscription to view, but the RDA instructions do require a subscription.
I should also point out that all of the RDA elements are available under a CC0 license on the RDA registry and various other places. In fact, this is the kind of stuff that vendors should be using. We offer it for free for vendors to develop it. So we are committed to the open source movement, certainly insofar as the data elements, the value vocabularies, the mappings with other standards. These are all open source now.
Okay. Can you have a last question? Yes, I'm conveying a doubt about one of my colleagues told me. Would there be a place for subjects in new RDA?
Subject analysis is out of scope for RDA, and what we're providing is a single element, and this is all that the LRM provides as well. It's out of scope for the library reference model. There are very good reasons for this, because you can divide the world into as many different subject schemes as you can think of, so there's a huge scaling problem. There is no standard for subject schemes. There are multiple standards. What we will do is provide the LRM element, and we will refine it so that RDA entities can be subjects. There's a specific model for that, but it's out of scope for the rest of RDA, as is acquisitions data, circulation control data, and anything but information retrieval and access or metadata for cataloging.
Okay. Gracias. Thank you. ¿Alguna pregunta más? Vale. Ok, pues tenemos la pausa ahora, unos 30 minutos. Me dicen, por favor, que dejéis los auriculares en el asiento. Please leave the headphones on your seats. Don't take it with you. y nos vemos en 30 minutos.